but I don't know that I will be any handsomer to you. I am managing a little bit of a health issue right now, but I'm willing to spend an hour with you to share with you a little bit of my experience. Now, for those who have signed up for today, the topic is called Designing Your Annual Learning Blueprint. And the idea here is, irrespective of what level you are within your organization as a learning professional, whether you be at the highest levels or at the lowest levels, it is important to know that there are logistics that meet strategy. So when we talk about strategy, the question I can always ask you is, what is your learning strategy for your organization? Okay, so what's an example of an answer to that question? Well, if I have a small organization of say 5 people, then my learning strategy is to be able to upskill these 5 people to be able to do the work of 10 people, maybe. So the learning strategy in the next 1 year is for me to be able to give as much learning to them as possible so that they can cover 10 people's work. Why? Because as a small organization, we need to grow fast. The faster we grow, the more money we bring in, the more employees we can bring in. So that's why whenever you join a startup, if you've ever joined a startup before, a small company, you'll notice that you will not be doing only one person's work. You'll be doing a lot of people's work. That's compared to a large organization, like say, I don't know where I come from. Petronas is an oil and gas organization where everybody has very specific roles to play, which means that it's very rare that you'll get other people's jobs to do. You'll be doing only your own job. And that being said, the learning blueprint or the plan for getting people to upskill over the 1 year is going to be different, is going to look different. There'll be very, very more specific things that you will put into there. So again, depending on what level of power or authority you have in your organization, today's topic might be a little bit of a mix and match. Some might be relevant to you, some might not be relevant to you. Some might be something you're already doing very well, and I'll be happy for you to share your experiences. I know Fanit has a lot of experience in this, but he still keeps coming for these webinars. Actually, you could be teaching these webinars, Fanit, right? So the way I've designed today's topic is simple, not too much technical, and also not too basic, not too difficult. So you'll find that again, sometimes this is not relevant to you. This is something that's interesting for you in the future, or this is something you can use now. So first off, let me introduce myself. My name is Nadzrin. For those who don't know me, I am a partner with the Capacity Specialist, and a lot of the value I bring in terms of learning and performance comes from an organization I used to work for, which is called Accenture. And I'll type the name into the text chat. If you are interested, you can look for this name. Accenture is a global consulting company with more than 500,000 staff. That's 500,000 staff globally. And as part of Accenture, I was in a organization. I cannot call it a unit because with 500,000 people, L&D or learning and development is not a unit, it's actually a whole separate organization, which we call Accenture Learning. And within Accenture Learning, I think there are 5,000 or 6,000 of us globally back then. Maybe there could be more. So every head office would have a few people, but then we wouldn't be reporting to the CEO of that country. We'd actually be reporting to our own CEO sitting somewhere else. So that's what when you talk about virtual work, working separately from the whole organization. I was sitting in an organization where I was not reporting to my country managing director. I was actually reporting to my boss, who was sitting in Chicago, 12 hours away. But I get paid through my Malaysian company. So it's a mess. When the larger the organization becomes, the more messy it becomes. But the idea is this: when you are part of learning and development, then the bigger the organization becomes, the more complex the roles become. And the bigger the organization becomes, the more difficult it is to implement your learning strategy, which is why you need to have a comprehensive blueprint. And the thing is, every blueprint will look different, right? Accenture's one I cannot show to you because it's PNC, but I'll give you the salient points for you to put into that blueprint. What is it? Is it a Word document? Is it an Excel spreadsheet? It's totally up to you. I've seen companies, their blueprint is using only a PowerPoint deck. So that being said, let me ask you, let me share with you what you're going to be doing over the next 1 hour, what I intend for you to get. Okay, so 60 minutes is not a lot of time. I want you to be able to identify the most important parts of a learning blueprint. I want you to be able to follow the most important sequence of planning a learning blueprint. And this part, I think you say, hey, this makes sense. This is very common sense, Nadzrin. Yes, but a lot of people don't stick to it, I notice. Number three is fulfill the requirements and considerations of each component of the blueprint. So now, let's define what is a blueprint. Why do we use the word blueprint? Well, an architect is someone who designs buildings. So what does he document? What document does he create for the builders to build the buildings? It is a blueprint. When we look at the human body, for example, what is the blueprint of the human body? It is the DNA. So the DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is what determines how many fingers we'll have, how tall we'll become, and in some cases when we'll die. So new science has shown us that we actually have DNA that determines when, how long we can live. So scientists are trying to change that. But the idea is, for every piece of work, when you want to do a project, you must have a plan. So the blueprint serves as the foundation of that plan. So that being said, my question to you is, why a learning blueprint, right? It's a high-level document. It's required to successfully implement an organization's learning culture. Now, I want everyone to do me a favor, go into the text chat, and then tell me in a very short sentence, what is a learning culture inside an organization? What is a learning culture to you? I'll give you 1 minute to type in your answer. Here we go, 1 minute. What is the definition of learning culture for you inside an organization? I think interesting answers from everyone, because I know there's quite a few people here who've been for these webinars before. So question again is, what is your definition of a learning culture within your organization? Thank you. So yes, engage people to grow. That's right. Thank you. So a learning culture is something that engages your people in the organization to grow. What else for everyone else? You have 30 seconds. I only have one answer so far. So let's see. Okay, Christine says a culture where everyone is interested to learn new things and develop new skills or competencies. Right, thank you. Tara says develop the resources. Sari says learning culture is a way organization use to upskill their people on a continuous basis. Rani says managers, seniors share practical knowledge to subordinates. Yes. Never stop learning and sharing. Saying, oh, hello. We have Lina, encourage continuous learning to improve the staff performance. Okay. Build people in learning habits. Good. Okay, let's see if there's any more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done. Okay. So, love in learning. Well, I can tell that everyone here are passionate learning professionals, because all of those answers, if it came from your heart, then you feel what I feel, in that there's so much potential in our people, yet they don't see it. The managers don't see the potential in their people. The managers don't see the potential in themselves. So what is learning? There's a really good book I'm reading right now, and I would recommend, if you find it over there at IBC. It's called How We Learn. I'll find it a little bit later, and I'll share it with you guys. It's called How We Learn. And just reading the first chapter, I have identified that this is very important. What we do in L&D is very, very important because it helps people to overcome new challenges. You think of COVID, you think of God, you think of economy, you think of a lot of things. Um, there are two ways we learn. We learn on our own by mistakes, or we learn by being taught. Someone else teaches us. Now, somewhere in there, the human brain can accommodate both types of learning. Your job, my job, L&D's job is to serve that second purpose. It is to help people learn by teaching them. But then we don't want to take over the whole work. We want them to self-learn as well. And you can see some of the ideas here is we start the process, right? Like Sehong says, never stop learning and sharing. Lina says, encourage continuous learning. So not only do we want them to learn, we want to kick off the process and then they continue on their own. This is a dream come true for any learning and development person, any teacher, any lecturer, any trainer, any coach, any chief learning officer, is that if we can use the money in such a strategic way, the time, the planning, we kick it off and then they just continuously learn. So that's what we call a learning culture. What is culture? It is something that you do not need to push. It will automatically replicate itself. And if you think of Khmer culture, if you think of Malaysian culture, if you think of I don't know, American culture, each of these are self-perpetuating. They grow on their own. Sometimes it changes back and forth a little bit, but we don't need to actually push. We don't actually need to actually teach it to people because our parents are teaching it to us. Our friends are teaching it to us. So a learning culture in an organization is something that's actually very, very critical. Now here's my here's my problem. A lot of organizations don't believe that L&D is important in building your organization. Share with me in the text chat if you believe that, if you feel the same way, that L&D, learning and development or training, is not being given enough focus or attention in your organization. Give me a yes or no. Give me a yes or no. Right? So, okay. So that means we want more attention, we want more money, we want more time, we want more resources to be able to do a better job. So one way of doing this is to actually have that authority. And when you have that authority, then you have a lot to do in terms of creating a giant strategy. Now, this is not solely up to HR. Now, I'm going to use the word human resources differently from L&D because I believe you are also in the same predicament. Sometimes L&D or training is just a small unit or it's just one person sitting under human resources. And then human resources, of course, payroll is about discipline. It's about competencies, things like that. But sometimes L&D is not given enough attention, enough budget, enough power. So as we grow on this planet, as we grow as an organization, the more mature we come, you'll find that organizations will pay more and more attention to learning and development because this is a quote from Peter M. Senge. If you can find this book, it's called The Fifth Discipline. Okay, so if you find a PDF, it'll be good. I think it's called The Fifth Discipline. And in it, the writer, Peter M. Senge, he says that most companies focus on cash flow, but they forget to focus on knowledge flow. What does cash flow mean? It means that the company wants to have more and more cash so that they become more flexible, they can grow faster. But growing faster with cash only allows you to grow big and fast logistically. You get new processes, you get new software, you get new vendors, you get all that. But there's another flow that people forget, companies forget to pay attention to, which is knowledge flow. And knowledge flow is just as important as cash flow. So if you guys want to convince your bosses or convince your leadership, get this book, right? It's a bit old, it's published in 1995, but his ideas are still very, very strong in that organizations focus on the money, but they don't focus on the upskilling. They don't focus on the knowledge. And as you can tell, when we do training, sometimes we do 2-day training, nothing changes. The people don't get smarter. It becomes just a box ticking exercise. And I hope this does not happen to your organization. Box ticking is a problem here in Malaysia, in that training managers will look at the budget and then ask the question, okay, what can I do with this money? Instead of looking at the competencies, looking at the learning gaps and asking, okay, what do we need to teach them? What do they need to learn? And then looking at the budget. So the problem with box ticking is that it doesn't create a learning culture. It creates a hit and run culture. Okay, you're gone for this 2 days training program. Congratulations. Here's your certificate. Here's your workbook. Here's your manual. When they go back to the office, they'll put the certificate into a folder. They'll put the manual in a shelf somewhere, and that's it. It doesn't get practiced. So correct everything you said here in terms of learning culture is you want to have that knowledge flow. When you go for a training program and you come back, do you practice it? Do you teach it to other people in your organization? Well, why? So the idea is, if you have a strategy, a learning strategy, then you can implement that, something that says to the whole organization, when you go for a training program and you come back, you must take an hour or two to teach it to your colleagues over the next 1 week. Everybody, whether it be the manager or the subordinate, anybody who goes for a training program, come back and teach it. Maybe sometimes the trainer gives you the slides, maybe they don't, but the knowledge is still sitting inside your head. So this is how you gain maximum value from the money that you spend. But if you don't have a learning culture in organization and it becomes only a hit and run sort of idea, then you're only focusing on 10% of the effort. So I believe everyone knows about the 70-20-10 model. Give me a yes or no if you're familiar with this. Are you familiar with the 70-20-10 model? Okay, Shifa says yes. Fanny says yes. Okay, a lot of people are going to say yes, I think. If you say no, please tell me no. Okay, because I don't want you to get lost. Okay, so 2 people say no. All right. Okay, so for the rest of you who said yes, I apologize. I'm just going to explain because I don't have a slide for it. Guys, learning can be broken up into 3 parts. And the model is called the 70-20-10 model. 70% of learning does not happen in the classroom. Okay, 20% of the learning does not happen in the classroom. Only 10% of the learning happens in the classroom. What does it mean? When you send your people for training, a 2-day course, with no follow-up, nothing at all, then they only get 10% of that learning, right? If you have gone for a course, I can bet you that whatever you learn in there, you only retain 10%. What happens in the other 90%? The other 90% has to do with application. So 70-20-10. First, you cover the 10% by giving them training. Then the 20% is someone in the organization must guide them to apply it. This is what we normally call coaching. So some companies, they say, oh, my managers are very, very busy. Can you coach them as well? Okay, so we as an external training provider, we come in, we teach you the 10% class, and then over the next 3 months, we do 20%, which is coaching. What happens to the other 70%? The other 70% is the participant applying in a long-term project. It could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be 1 year. Okay, and this is sometimes covered in things like called action learning. Okay, sometimes called action learning. Sometimes they're called post-class or post-training projects. It doesn't matter what you call it, whatever methodology. All it means is that they have to put it into practice. And very mature organizations, they realize this, they recognize the 70-20-10, they will pay. They will pay the money to be able to send them for training 2 days and then cover the rest of that. In many cases, they leave it to the vendor, they leave it to the training provider to do it. But some organizations, their L&D is strong enough, they are already ready. They have a system built, not a software, but they have processes built. When you come back from training, this is your responsibility. Submit a report on what you have learned, and then let's do a 30-minute sharing session every week where you share with the whole organization. Sometimes these are called lunch learning. Lunch and learn. Sometimes these are called skill sessions. Okay. So in America, they like to call this brown bags. A brown bag means that you bring your lunch in a brown bag, you sit in a training room, and then whoever wants to present could present that day. So this is how you maximize your training dollar. Not only you send your staff for training and they come back and tada, they know nothing. No. When you teach it to other people, when you apply it in the workspace, that is when you get maximum value to cover that 70 and 20. Now, did you understand what I just said? If yes, give me a yes in the text chat. Okay, good. Now, these are some ideas. When I say this, sometimes people say, Nadzrin, don't you want business? You're giving us these ideas. I'm saying that a good organization with a good learning culture means that everybody teaches each other based on what they learn. So when you go for training and you come back, don't keep it to yourself. Share it to your organization, share it to your people, and then everybody in the organization already has their own skill sets. Why are you not teaching it to each other? Why are you keeping it to yourself? Managers from different departments can come change for a while, maybe visit another department for half a day or 2 hours, and then share their knowledge, their wisdom from their department. In actuality, you don't actually need a lot of training if you think about it. You have a lot of good people in your organization, have them teach each other. That's where you get that learning culture. Okay, now we come back to the learning blueprint. Now that I've already primed you for that, what does the learning blueprint do? Well, number one, you have a strategy in your organization. If you do not have a strategy for your learning, then you are just like a boat that has no rudder. You don't know when to go left, you don't know when to go right. So this is how you circulate your L&D initiative, your strategies, your principles, what the organization wants to get out of the employees in terms of learning. Number two, it is to increase awareness amongst employees of certain things. So, for example, there are many changes that are happening nowadays. We talk about blockchain, we talk about cryptocurrency, we talk about ethics, we talk about social media policies. If your company does not have a social media policy, then anybody can post anything, can post TikToks while they're at work, things like that. So, increasing awareness of employees also falls under the ambit of L&D, not only human resources, because it's something that they need to learn. Spreading of companies' values, that's you covered that already. Motivate talents through learning opportunity. That's right. So if you can identify, okay, this is talent. If you talk about talent management, this is talent that we want to upskill very quickly. Let's give them the opportunity to go for this training. Developing employee skill, definitely. What's the difference? Skill is, of course, repetition. And sending people for training, I'm going to say it right now, okay? Sending people for training does not develop skill, okay? Sending people for training does not develop skill. At the most, they will get knowledge. But where do you develop that skill is when they actually apply it in the workplace. So you cannot run away, L&D, L&D people. Once they come back, if you don't have a process, if you don't have something for them to do, to lock in that learning, say goodbye to your training dollar. You've wasted it because your KPI is, I have spent the money. This is the problem with a lot of training people in Malaysia, right? When I say box ticking, they prove to their leadership, I have spent the budget, which means that the work has been done. But no, how come the people are not getting smarter? How come the people are not doing their jobs more productive? Why is time still being wasted? Why are we still, not doing a good job? Well, that's because they got knowledge, but did not get skill. Skill comes only as a result of practice in the workplace. Okay, as a result of skill, then you have productivity increase. Okay, what questions do you have for now? Please give me an end in the text chat. If you have no questions, what questions do you have? Please ask me now. If you have no questions, give me an end in the text chat. Okay, Sengong says, how to track staff development after training? Good question. There are a few things you can do. Number one is you can actually speak to their managers. Okay, let's give a scenario, right? You are sending 20 people for communication training. Each of these 20 people have their own superiors, have their own managers. So before you send them for training, you must send an email, or you collect all of the managers into one Zoom call for about 10-15 minutes, and you say, thank you, managers, for coming. We are going to send your people for communication training. And some of you have already nominated your people for this training. Okay. I want you to understand that when they come back, they will have extra skills in communication. So here's what I want you to do. Please give them something to do that will challenge them to apply their communication skill, and then feedback us after 1 month. What have you noticed increase? That is the simplest way to do this. A bit more complex, you provide a checklist. Okay, there's a standard checklist which is for all training. Have you seen them implement? If so, give us a rating from 1 to 5. That's a very standard checklist. Or you ask the trainer, can you prepare a checklist for our managers to observe your participants when they apply it back in their work? So that means that the trainer who comes in, let's just say is an external trainer, not only they provide the training materials and they train the participants, they also give you a checklist that's specific to that course. Okay, so for example, if you come for a communication course, maybe the question is for the supervisor or for the manager, um, have they applied building rapport techniques? And what happens is sometimes the manager gets confused because he didn't go for the course. So you can have a short explanation down there, or you can actually get the trainer to brief the manager. This is what they are learning. This is what they're going to learn. And with TCS, we do this quite a lot. We actually, when possible, we meet up with the managers beforehand to find out what specific skill gaps that they want us to close, because we're not part of the organization. So what specific skill gaps they want us to close, and that we put into the checklist. And then sometimes we modify the course to fulfill that. So Sengho, does that answer the question simply? Yes or no? The simplest way is to tell the manager, please look out for positive changes. A bit more complex, give them a form. Now, anything more than that might take time, and you might find some managers don't want to do it because it's tedious. Okay, so another way is to appoint coaches within your organization, dedicated coaches that are not your managers, not managers of these participants, and then every week or so, have the participants come for a 10-15 minute coaching session just to update the coach. Okay, how have they applied these techniques and things like that. So I can hear, I can probably hear in the group right now, oh, that's so difficult. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're serious about L&D, if you're serious about creating a learning culture, if your organization is serious about creating a learning culture, then you must implement not just tracking. I won't use the word tracking, but it is more mentoring. That is where the 20% comes in. So to answer your question, 10% they go for the class, 20% is when they go for the mentoring or the coaching, 70% is when they actually apply in the work. All right. So when you upscale productivity, only then can you consider, that's the last bullet point there, only then can you consider that your training has been delivered successfully. When there is an output, there has to be an output, which is less time taken doing a job, increase in productivity, less wastage, improve relationships in the organization, less complaints, less MC, less sick days taken, things like that. When I first started at L&D, I started in fitness, in wellness. So now I'm doing learning and development, but back then I was a fitness trainer, and we did a lot of projects for Petronas, which is our local oil and gas. The only KPI they wanted us to hit, right, to consider the training was successfully delivered, was a reduction in sick days. Because a lot of people were taking sick, were taking ill, they had to go to the doctor, things like that, and they lost man days. So they would only consider the project successful if there was a reduction in sick days. And we did that over 1 year. So it was a whole organization. We processed all of them. We taught them how to manage the stress, how to sit properly at their desk, how to exercise using simple water bottle at their desk without having to go to the gym, things like that. And we saw a significant decrease in the number of sick days. So guys, old school training mentality is that the KPI is I have spent the budget according to what the organization give me this budget, I spend this budget. Congratulations, I have won. But new way of thinking is we go learning and performance, not learning and development only. learning and performance. There must be evidence that the money was well spent. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you this question before we proceed further, because that will give me context on what I talk about in the blueprint. What is your level of authority in your organization? I want you to type in the text chat A, B, C, or D. If you are the chief learning officer, that means I can strategize L&D, I have full control, full power, then type in A. If you are reporting to a chief learning officer and you are what we call a learning and development manager, then you say, yep, I can spend the budget, I can spend the time. I'm given full authority to do this, but it must still follow the business strategy or the learning and development strategy of the organization, which I don't set. Somebody else sets it. C, I can only arrange and schedule. Therefore, I'm a training manager. I cannot decide how to spend the budget. I'm told, okay, I'm told to spend this budget, but here is the vendors I want you to go and look at. Here are the trainings I want you to go and look at. Okay, I cannot decide what training. Or D, I can only apply what is ordered. So training officer only listens. Okay, I just contact the training vendors and I contract the venue. That's all I do. So give me your level of authority, A, B, C, or D. Okay, we got C, we got D. All right, we got B. Good. I used to be B. Well, okay. Anybody gonna type in A? No one? Okay, B, C, D. All right. So for those who say D, C, or B, I'm going to make a prayer right now, and I pray that you get to A one of these days, because that's when you can make the most impact in your organization. So let's talk about the blueprint. My old organization is called Accenture, and like I said, we had 500,000 staff. This was the learning center that I operated in Kuala Lumpur. It was sitting in a hotel on the 7th floor. So imagine this, the hotel has office space that it rents out. It also has, you know, the hotel rooms. And Accenture was sitting on the 7th floor. Now, when I say Accenture, I'm not saying Accenture, the whole organization. We had offices everywhere within the country, but we were not head office. We were Accenture Learning. And what was the last name they call it? It was called the Accenture Connected Learning Center, the ACLC. And as you can see, we have traditional classrooms at the bottom right, and we have a connected classroom. This photo was taken in 2015, long before Zoom existed, long before all all of the apps that we take for granted now existed. So that room, if you look at the room right there, the one on the right, with all of the participants sitting in it, every table has a screen. They have a barcode. You can actually present to the main screen, the TV screen in front, from your laptop on the table. You have the power to do that. We could give that ability to everyone. At the front of the classroom, there is a host. So the job of the host is to assist the lecturer or the speaker with a lot of logistics. So they can change the screen, they can upload PowerPoint decks, things like that. And the trainer or the lecturer can also write on these boards. Now, this is 2015, mind you. Nowadays, we go like, yeah, we can do that. Well, 2015, it was quite cutting edge. This whole room costs 1 million USD. This whole room costs 1 million USD. Not just the objects in there, but the systems we put into place, the high-speed internet between countries we spent on, because this is what they call a connected classroom. And the connected classroom connects you from Malaysia to India, to Japan, to Korea. So you could have 3 classrooms linked together, learning together from one same lecturer. Now, if you can imagine that was hell to manage. With only 6 people. We had 6 people in the learning and development team in Malaysia. We had to manage normal size classrooms. We had to manage these classrooms. We had to manage flights for participants from different countries. Okay, so I come from a place similar to you, except that we only did delivery. Okay, the Accenture Learning Blueprint was decided in Bangalore, in India. Every year they would send out the blueprint. Sorry, they sent out a document, and we would need to localize it for where we were. So there are 5 learning centers. There's St. Charles in Chicago. There is Madrid in Spain. There is Heathrow in the UK. There is Bangalore in India, and there's Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So each of us, each learning center would take care of only Accenture staff. These are all internal training, by the way. Only Accenture staff within that particular region. Okay, so what parts are there of the annual learning blueprint that can help us to deploy things like this? Well, number one, you need to have the high-level strategy document. What is the business goals? What the organization wants to achieve in that financial year? So my question is, give me a yes or no, guys. Do you have access to this? Does leadership tell you, hey, L&D, this year the company wants to achieve this much money? Give me a yes or no. Do you have access to this document? Are you given it? Are you briefed it? Give me a yes or no in the text chat. Do you know what the company wants to achieve this year? Okay, so Sifa yes says yes. Do you know? Okay, we got yes, 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 yes. Okay. Good. Nobody is saying no, so that's a good idea. That's good. Second is you have your learning events. So what types of interventions do you want to fulfill the learning needs and the budget? Okay, so this is not sequential. These are 2 things that you must have. So what is a learning event? You need to know whether it's going to be face-to-face training, virtual training, coaching, mentoring. What are these? These are all called learning events. Even if you do a motivation team building program, that's what we call a learning event. The event where you gather people together, you put them into the same room or same group, is called a learning event. Even if it is virtual, even if it's online. Then we have the learning needs analysis, or what some people call a TNA. Usually, in many organizations, I find they start from here. They don't start from the business goals. They don't even know what learning events they have. They start from the learning needs analysis. And this is good. This is good to have. When you reach A level or B level, I expect that you start from business goals, not from learning needs analysis. Because LNA is a short-term document. It goes, oh, we need this. Yeah, but you need it for how long? We need this for this year. But a business goal can be 3 to 5 years. So if you only do LNA, you'll find that you are only able to develop them for a short period of time, and then their skill disappears. But if you know what the business goal is, for example, this year we want to reduce waste by 30%. We want to increase productivity by 25%. How does that fit into the learning needs analysis? You need to have a very clear idea of the overall business goal. That's where you can create that strategy. And last but not least is, of course, your schedule. Again, some training managers, I think training officers, they work only on the schedule. They don't access everything else. I could be wrong. I don't know how it works in Cambodia, but over here in Malaysia, if you're a training officer, then all you have to do, as, as instructed by your learning manager, is, okay, here are the events. Go and figure out how to put this to a schedule and then blast it to everyone. Okay, so these are the 4 parts that you must have in order to have a complete annual learning blueprint. If not, then all you have is just a schedule. Don't call it a blueprint, call it a schedule. That's all you have. Okay, what are the most important considerations? Well, based on my learning and my experience, I say always, when we talk about the considerations, once you have all of that information, the dates are the most important. Venue is is not important. Venue is important, but it is less important than the dates. Tell me if you agree with me or not. When you want to plan something, dates always come first. Give me a yes, agree or disagree. Tell me in the text chat. Okay. So depending, whenever you want to plan something, always talk about the dates first, and then you talk about what kind of event. So why is dates important? Because we have public holidays, we have company meetings, we have company get-togethers, we have all sorts of things that it makes no sense. Okay, we want to do training on this date. Okay, look at the date first. So what we do in Accenture is we do four things. We do five things. Number one is we identify and black out public holidays. I don't care. If it's a public holiday, we're going to black it out. Sometimes even in Malaysia, because Accenture Learning, our center was in a hotel, we know for a fact that every year the hotel gets booked out full during F1 season. Does everybody know what F1 is? Formula One, the races. So once upon a time, Malaysia actually had an F1 track, and we spent a lot of money to run Formula One in Malaysia until we couldn't run it anymore. So we know for a fact, based on our experience, that every year during F1 season, the hotel will be blocked out totally. So we decide we're not going to run training at all in our learning center simply because we're not going to fight for rooms. Okay, so we send this message up to Accenture Global. We say, guys, if you want to run trainings, you cannot have them live in the hotel. At the most, they have to stay in another hotel. Okay, we're not going to take care of that. Or they come in for the day. That means only Kuala Lumpur participants can come in for a course like that. But what we normally do is we just say no. So we identify, we black out all public holidays, and then we identify, we black out planned company-wide events. What does the word blackout means? It means no events can be run during this session within our learning center. Yeah, and we talk about learning center because we try not to go outside, which costs more. It's more cost effective to run it in our own learning center. Why have a learning center if we're not going to use it? Okay. Then we create gray dates. What's the difference between black and gray? Gray means, okay, these are possible dates where we can run programs or events. We take those dates and we go to all departments. We send it out globally, okay, and then we get a vote back to see, and we have a system for that. But if you're in a small company, I think it's much easier. You can send out an email, or you set up a spreadsheet on a SharePoint. Get the departments to say, okay, come back and tell us which are your blackout dates. Which are your blackout dates? And when the best case scenario is when they send back everything, you have only dates that everybody can agree on in the next 1 year. So these are what we call the white dates. White dates are the dates where confirmed you can run training on. So once you have those dates, you know for a fact, okay, I can do it now. So let me show you an example. I cannot show you the original because it is PNC. I've marked up a little bit from what we used to have. This is an Excel spreadsheet. It's called the classroom usage and schedule, where we use this in our Accenture Learning Center. So you can see this one, I've tagged it as May 2021 at the bottom. And this is the amount of space we had in the classroom, in the learning center. We have 6 classrooms. Classroom 1 and 2 classroom 1, 2, and 3 are standard classrooms. Classroom 4, 5, and 6 is are 3 classrooms that can be opened up. So we got dividers, we can open up, make it one huge classroom. So that's what we had there. We also had 10 breakout rooms. Okay, BO stands for breakout. We had 10 breakout rooms that allowed participants to do activities in different groups. So let's just say you're from classroom 1, right? So you're in classroom 1, okay, we break out 6 groups into 6 different breakout rooms. Go and discuss there and then come back. Do your activities and come back. Or we can do mock interviews. So you wait outside of the breakout room and a faculty or a trainer will sit inside pretending to be an interviewer. So then you knock the door, hello, I'm here for the interview, you come in. So we have breakout rooms galore. This is very important, especially when you want to do a very high level advanced skill training or role plays. You'll notice at the bottom here, it says Sheraton or Renaissance. Now, we were in Sheraton Hotel in Kuala Lumpur. So what does Sheraton here mean? It means any other rooms that we can use within the hotel that is not the 7th floor. Okay, so I'll repeat, 7th floor was totally Accenture. But Sheraton also has their own event rooms. They have ballrooms downstairs, things like that. When we overspill, right, when we have too many people, we have too many participants, then what we do is we request, can we use certain ballrooms or certain event rooms downstairs? So that's when we tag Sheraton here. Another one is Renaissance. Renaissance is another hotel just down the street from us, about, I think, a 5-minute walk, 5 or 10-minute walk. No, actually, it's 5 minutes. It's a 5 minute walk. So if we overspill again, sometimes we have a conference, sometimes we have these huge seminars. So we will put them up in Sheraton, we'll put them at Renaissance, and they will shuttle to Sheraton every single day. So this is what we used. And again, I don't have the original copy because I left it when I resigned. But this is a quite typical facsimile. Okay, so take a look at 13 and 14 May right here. This is what we call a blackout date. 13th and 14th in Malaysia is Hari Raya, is Aidil Fitri, is the Muslim Christmas. So these 2 days, I've blacked out. Normally, we would black out like 2 days before or 2 days after. But I have decided, okay, for this year, I'm going to black out only these 2 days. Why? Because it's the pandemic and people don't celebrate as much as they used to. So that means we could still, on the left side, 10, 11, 12, or 15, 16, we could actually run programs. Now, what is 8, 9? Why is it shaded differently? Is because it's a weekend. So you want to be able to see very quickly what is a weekend, what is a weekday. Why? Because in our training programs, we have courses where the trainers come. They don't come from a training provider. They come from inside the company. They are managers, senior managers. They are actually staff of the organization, and they come to teach the course. And when they come to teach the course, they need to learn how to teach the course. So this course, for example, is called APM, Accenture Project Management. And there are two parts to it. There's APM prep, where the trainers come to learn how to teach the course. And then it's like a TTT, just like a train the trainer. And then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the actual course itself. So our courses are not 2 day long. Our courses tend to be full certifications that are 5 days, sometimes 2 weeks. This one, for example, is called VDPM, Value Driven Program Management, 2 day prep plus 5 day class. Then we look at this one. This is called CAS, Core Adelaide School. And Core Adelaide School lasts for 2 weeks. So you see 24 to 29, and then 31st onwards, well, that goes to June. That's a 2 week class. But before the 2 weeks start, the faculty or the trainers have to come in to learn how to teach. They have to learn how to teach, right? Okay. So that being said, if you look at what is taken up is breakout 1, 2, 3 for that. On other days, what normally happens is we actually have a code here. It's not just APM. Every course will have its own code in the system. So we'll put the code there so we know exactly which ones it is. Sometimes we're running 2 or 3 APMs at the same time. Now this HQ Meet, this is an example of a code, is when headquarters wants to use our learning center for meetings, not training. They'll use it for meetings. So you have that there as well. Okay, breakout 1, breakout 2, 8, 9, 10. Now, what is this? This is a schedule that combines between, the date and the venue itself. So we're skipping ahead. So once we have the dates, then we can tell you what venue you're going to get. Depending on how you run your training programs, whether in-house or in a hotel, can be more difficult, can be easier. For us, we had full control over the venue, so we did not need to inquire. We were sitting in the venue. I work in that venue, so I know for a fact which rooms are free for what. Sometimes when we need to do maintenance, we'll black out those dates and those venues as well. So for example, I remember one time there was a breakout 4, 5, 6. Was it 4, 5, 6? No, it was breakout 10. Breakout 10 was blacked out for the whole month. There was one time because it was leaking. So we had a leak from the ceiling, and Sheraton had to fix it. But it was so complex, so we just blocked it out. When they took only 2 weeks to fix it, okay, then we opened up these dates again, and we said to Accenture, okay, if you guys want these dates, this venue is open. But that happens on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so I started with dates and I sort of jumped to venue. What question do you have? Please ask me now. If you have no questions, give me an N in the text chat so we can continue. Hello. I'm sorry. I think I got disconnected. Marily, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wonder.
What happened to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Did everyone have questions or no questions? Okay. Sifa says since the training is not the prioritized, the plan is not go as planned. How to minimize the solve? I don't understand. Sifa, can you ask me verbally? Can you turn on your mic?
Yeah, it is a very good one that you have mentioned of the create the plan, even though the schedule, we understand where the black or it's so well. But yeah, in reality, the cases always happen in the company. Yeah, there's or something urgent that the plan does not go as planned. Because as you already know, the training is
It's
not
not
really the
prioritized.
first priority as we talked at the beginning and moments.
Okay. Sifa, so
yeah.
you're saying it happens to us all the time because we are considered number two. We're always considered second class, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. May I ask, how did you answer the question for authority, A, B, C, or D?
I remember I said that the second like B, right? Yes.
Yes.
After the top one, yes.
Okay. So who do you report to in the organization?
Have one more is the seniors here, seniors like HRA, senior HR manager.
Okay.
Yes.
And then who does a senior HR manager report to?
Report to the GM.
The GM.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to say something to everyone, right? You can do one of two things. You can accept that this is how this is how life is, right? For example, when it's a season for power cuts, well, that's just it. We have power cuts this month. We accept it, or you can work to change it. And if you cannot change power cuts in Cambodia because it's difficult, you can start changing the priorities in your organization. You need to make a business case for it. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy because we work in a hierarchy. In Malaysia and Cambodia, we work hierarchy. We say, oh no, the boss will not like this. The only answer for this is you need to take a stand and you need to convince your HRA and then convince your GM, sit down with GM and see if you can change the mentality. Sometimes all it needs is just a push from the GM to say, yes, we spend a lot of money on training, we spend a lot of effort and we're not getting enough back. The organization seems to think we can cancel training anytime. We can pull our subordinate, okay, this is more important, you don't need to go for training. In Accenture, I'm telling you this, right? Accenture with 500,000 people, in 2001, that was the mentality. That was exactly the mentality. And then our first chief learning officer, his name is Ted Waddington. What he did was he actually went up to leadership and he didn't scold them. He gave them numbers. He said, guess what, guys? We are spending close to 800 million. We're spending $800 million annually on training. And this is what we're getting back. Why? Because there are people who are not being sent for training. There are people who registered for training, cancelled. And every time cancel, we have to pay a fee to the hotel. We have to cancel their flights, things like that. So we're actually wasting money. And Accenture loves money. So how did he persuade them? He said, we need to have a standard policy that where managers cannot simply cancel training, or where managers understand the benefit of sending their people for training. That's one. Number two, the training itself must be high impact. So whatever training you bring into your organization, it must have such an impact. Whenever they come back from training, the manager must see a difference. But if it's still the hit and run type of training program, where the they come back and I don't see any change. That's what creates the learning culture, the mentality that, oh, training is not as useful. So Sifa, I don't know whether this will help you, but if you have that strength, I'd say go and have this conversation with HRA, because it's causing trouble to LND. We're scheduled it nicely, we've done everything, and then you go and do this. So Sifa, what do you think? It's a bit challenging, a bit scary, but somebody has to start doing it. Even in Accenture with 500,000 staff, it was one person who bravely went up to the leadership and said, we're losing money. Yeah, might as well not send people for training at all. Sifa, or how would you respond to that? Okay, now, people might be scared because if you don't have that level of authority, you will keep having these problems. Yeah, and I did not have that level of authority because I was way down on the food chain, but we're happy that our chief learning officer, so that's why it's important to have a CLO. Before that, Accenture did not have a chief learning officer. It was only after he brought it to their attention, then they made him chief learning officer. And to this day, we have a chief learning officer. Okay, thank you very much for that. So Sifa, again, you come for this webinar, you're thinking maybe, oh, I can get some answers. Well, the answers might be difficult. All right. Second, then you determine what type of learning event. There are a few types here. One is called core competency training. What is core competency training? It is training that you can roll out to everyone in the organization. Okay, so like core values, communication, customer service, all of these things everybody needs. So usually when you schedule core competency training, you can schedule a lot of it. Now the good news is that there's a lot of training providers out there that do these kinds of trainings, which means that it's if you want to schedule a lot of series in 1 year to get everyone to the same level, it's easier. Okay, what becomes a bit more difficult is functional competency training. And what's the difference between core and functional? Like I said, core is everything everybody needs, like communication, soft skills, things like that. Functional competency is those specific skill sets, technical skills that only some people in certain departments need. For example, copywriting. Okay, does everybody know what copywriting is? Yes or no? Does everyone know what copywriting is? Give me a yes or no in the text chat. Copywriting. Okay, I'll tell you. Copywriting is what marketing people do when they create adverts or they create brochures or create flyers. So basically it's creating influential or persuasive writing to get people to want to sign up for a course or to get people to join a competition or things like that. So if you have an internal newsletter, then what you need is people who are versed in copywriting. Now here's the problem. Do you need to send 30 people for copywriting course in your organization? No, you don't. It's usually just 1 or 2 people. So functional competency training usually tends to be public training that you send them out for. Core competency training is something that you can do in-house safely, especially if you have a learning center or you have training rooms. The third type is what we call new joiner orientation. Tell me in the text chat, what do you call new joiner orientation in your company? Is it called onboarding? Is it called introduction week? Or what is it called? Staff induction. Okay. Anybody else? New staff orientation, induction program. Okay. So in onboarding, yeah. In Accenture, we call it NJO, new joiner orientation. Which that was the first time I heard of it when I joined that organization. Before that, I also used staff induction. So now I use new joiner orientation because it sounds a lot more fun. So new joiner tends to be 1 day, 2 days. In my case, it was 5 days. 3 days in HQ and then 2 days, 2 days in headquarters and then 3 days at the learning center. That was my first week, just getting up to speed. So new joiner orientation usually is similar to core competency training, but not as many as 30 people at a time. Sometimes only 10, sometimes only 15. So that can be, in some organizations, they say, oh, that one is only HR's work. Well, in many cases, I notice it becomes L&D's work as well, because remember, you're cascading company values, right? What did we say was the blueprint's job is to cascade company values. So you need to have all of this information in your blueprint. And last but not least is coaching. Coaching can be the most tedious one because it is the most difficult one to schedule. Yeah, imagine scheduling like 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, and you have to show up at a particular time. Sometimes people come late. So we've had this issue. So Chitra, are you here? So Chitra will know how difficult it is to schedule coaching, individual coaching with your people, whether it be for performance or post-course. Okay, CIFA says normally new join program will include competency training, not necessarily. Depends on your organization. So if your organization is highly technical, like an oil and gas, yes, Petronas runs a 6-month onboarding. 6-month onboarding. So yes, new joiner plus core competency plus functional competency, it depends. So most organizations I know of, they only do new joiner orientation. You join the company based on what qualifications you have, what degree you already have. So again, Sifa, yes, depending on the position, depending on what's necessary. Does that answer the question? I noticed the more technical the organization, the more compliance oriented the organization, the longer and more comprehensive the introduction program is. Medicine, coming to a hospital, manufacturing, oil and gas, things like this. Does that answer the question, Siva? Okay. So that we cover events. Then we cover budget. And for those of you who answered D, this is very, very important because the money spent can be quite different. The price of something can be quite different depending on certain considerations. For example, classroom is far more expensive than virtual, especially if you know nowadays, depending on what they need. Classroom definitely more expensive than virtual. Travel versus remote, travel is more expensive than having people dial in remotely. The third one is very important. I would like you to do, whenever possible, speak to the trainer to understand what do they need. And very specifically, if you run an awareness level type of course, usually awareness level type of course is sit down and listen, right? It's mostly like a briefing. It's mostly like a motivation course that you sit there, you do nothing. Once you start going up to knowledge level course, knowledge level needs a bit more movement. So for example, for awareness level, you can arrange the classroom in what they call theater style or classroom style, where everybody sits next to each other, everybody shares a table facing forward into the classroom. But once it becomes knowledge, then you want people to discuss with each other as a group. So what we do is we do pods. And if I go back to the classroom I showed you, okay, you look at the bottom left picture, these are what we call pods. And each pod is designed in such a way, there's 6 pods, which means 6 teams. Each pod is designed and angled in such a way that everybody can see all of the whiteboards and everybody can see the projection screen. If we angled it wrong, there are some people who cannot see the screen. So if you look at the table that's closest to the camera, it's angled off at 45 degrees. On the opposite side of the room is the same, 45 degrees. This is what we call a chevron. Okay, so a chevron design ensures that everybody can see everything in the room at the same time. And whenever somebody speaks, the lecturer or the trainer can see them as well. Okay, so that's what we call the chevron design. So when you want to do this, I apologize. When you want to do this, at knowledge level, you will need more space. So originally you go, oh, you want to have 30 people. Okay, I can fit 30 people into classroom 1. Without realizing, they actually have to do discussions and the tables have to be far away from each other so they don't accidentally listen in discussions. Understand what the trainer is going to do. More than that is commitment level. What is commitment level? Usually is facilitation. Facilitation means that they need more movement, they need to run around, they need to move, they play games, things like that. And last but not least is skill. In some cases, skill requires a lot of breakout rooms, which is why in Accenture we had up to 10 breakout rooms. We needed them to be able to prepare a pitch and then go in and meet someone and then pitch something, role play with someone. That will tell you how much you will need. and that will lead into what venue you have. And last but not least, of course, is the trainer fee. Okay, how much are you paying to the consultant if it's not an internal trainer? Last but not least is venue. Okay, I'm going to speed up a bit because Marty says we're over by 6 minutes. We're going to open up for Q&A. These are some of the requirements that you must pay attention to. I believe you have already. Food logistics, distance from main operations, required movement and breakouts, which is, of course, what you do within different levels, different layers. And I'm going to type in the layers now, okay? So awareness, knowledge, commitment, and skill. These are 4 different types of courses that require different types of venues, different types of placements. Okay, so required movement and breakout means that the more towards the skill it is, the more space they will need, the more distance they will need from each other. And of course, now legal requirements in Malaysia, we have to stick to SOPs on COVID. Classroom can no longer be more than 14 people. We used to be able to cram 30 people in a classroom. Now they actually have distances. You cannot be sitting next to each other under 2 meters or things like that. And then last one is etiquette and ethical requirements. Now, do you want to be cognizant of what's happening? For example, in Saudi Arabia, they do not put males and females sitting next to each other. So depending on your organization's etiquette and ethical requirements, depending on your country's social and what's the word, religious norms, then you need to pay attention to this, because the venue will need to cater for that. And I don't know, let me ask you this question, Cambodians, right? Do you play games? Do you feel comfortable playing games in a classroom where men and women have to touch each other? Give me a yes or no. Do you feel comfortable playing games or activities? Yep, Fanny says depend on the game. Okay. In Malaysia, that's not something you can do very easily. And Fanny says depends on the game. I would also say depends on the game. But over here, very sensitive about males and females touching. So we have games that are totally individual based, but can still be done in a group. Okay, so if the venue does not allow for that, you ask the trainer or you check with the requirements. That's what you figure out. Okay, all right. Not close touch. Well, no, touching, total touching, sometimes holding. So when I was at Accenture is a very American company. So I was taught to play games that involve a lot of close touching, which sometimes get a bit ridiculous. So after a while, we started getting complaints, not just from Asian women, but from women around the world who said that we don't appreciate these kinds of activities. So, okay, then we started changing it up, as long as we were aware of it. So as long as you are aware, we should be good to go. Let me ask the ladies in the group before we close up today. Would you be comfortable with such games? Yes or no? Only the ladies, yeah? So nowadays, men, trainers, L&D people have to be a lot more understanding, because it's not as easy, right? We must change some of our thinking to ensure that we are keeping everybody comfortable. Okay, so that being said, a question again. The question is for the ladies in the group right now. Do you feel comfortable playing training games where you have to touch each other in close contact? It's not as simple as holding hands. Sometimes it gets in quite close. Yeah. So that being said, we don't complain about what we cannot do. We just come up with games where we can play and fulfill everyone's comfort requirements. So that being said, thank you very much, everyone. We have had a request for the slides. Definitely you will get a copy of the slides. And I apologize if this fulfilled or did not fulfill your requirements today, because there's quite a huge difference. Some people are B, C, and D level. I wanted to aim to cover as much as possible, so from basic to intermediate to a little bit advanced. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. Let's open up for Q&A. What questions do you have? If you have no questions, give me an N in the text chat, and we will let you go for the rest of the day. If you have no questions, give me an N in the text chat. Yes, I heard the microphone go on. Do you have a question? No? Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Maradi. Thank you, everyone. I apologize. I took 13 minutes away from you, but thank you very much for being with us in our webinar series. We hope to see you in future in the next few sessions.